What's up? What's happening on a Wednesday? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming on YouTube at the Team 980, and we are counting down the 10 most important commanders in the 2024 season every day at 4:30. So 25 minutes from right now, our list continues with number 8. We start, though, with the field trip I took after the show last night. Not really the field trip, the work trip that I took after the show last night to Audi Field, where the U.S. women's national team tied Costa Rica 0-0 in their final send-off match before the Paris Olympic Games. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Again, countdown for the Commanders at 4:30 today. We'll talk about Alex Sarr's 0-15 night in Summer League with Josh Robbins at 5:15. And then coming up at 6 o'clock, our positional group preview continues with the offensive line. We're doing those every day. So if you are listening now and you'll be making dinner or whatever it is when you get home by 6, we're doing those every day at 6 o'clock. Definitely worth checking out the Hoffman Show podcast to get positional group previews, 6 questions about each position group. We did D-line yesterday. It's O-line today, so that's still to come here on the show. But last night at Audi Field, and before I even get to Audi Field, a quick story that I thought was pretty cool, something that hit me as I walked out of our Half Street studios here in D.C. yesterday. So we're obviously a couple blocks from Nats Park, and last time that the U.S. women's national team played at Audi Field was similarly some weekday where I did the show until 7 and then walked over to Audi Field afterwards. I went to that game as a fan with my wife, but we were walking down by the Big Stick, not even at Nats Park yet, from where we are here in Navy Yard, and all of a sudden I almost run into someone trying to get onto a scooter, like one of the Lime scooters. And I realized in that moment, in September of 2022, that the person that I almost ran into was Trinity Rodman, the Washington Spirit star forward, who was probably just on the verge of making that very game as a member of the national team, but ultimately didn't make it and was going as a fan. And lo and behold, I watched Trin, I walked past her. Ultimately, she gets on a scooter, winds up scooting past me and everybody else, and there she is, just among the fans, scooting, relatively unbothered. I think she was relatively unnoticed as she made her way through D.C., from the Nats Park side of Capitol Street over to Audi Field and into the stadium, and then watched her friends play that she knew on the team and in the stadium that she called home. And that hit me last night as I was walking to the stadium along those same streets, along that same route, knowing I was about to go watch the hometown hero in Trin start for the national team, and she will ultimately be a starter in now her second major tournament. She was on the World Cup roster last year, and then she is going to be one of the premier players on this Olympic roster, and she is still just 22 years old. However, there is a huge burden on her and the other frontline players. Mal Swanson, formerly Mal Pugh, when she was with the Spirit a bunch of years ago, but still relatively young. Sophia Smith, who's been on the show before, former NWSL MVP, best forward in the league, in league play for the last couple of years in the NWSL. And for some reason, a trend that continued last night, they just cannot finish when they're wearing the national team shirt. There were opportunities. There were situations where they could have created an opportunity, and they just cannot, with regularity, seem to put the ball in the back of the net. And it's really frustrating. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that, but I think it starts with sometimes the decision-making of when do I shoot, when do I pass, when do I take the shot, when do I cross, and hopefully one of the other two is there for the finish. And that is hard to develop, and I think it's ultimately why last night Emma Hayes, the new manager of the U.S. women's national team, decided to play her starters. I was talking about this with our guy Andre Carlisle from the District Press in the press box before the game. And I was like, I'm not surprised that she's starting the starters. And he's like, I am. It's an Olympic tournament. You're going to have to rotate the squad. You're going to, it's a small roster. Games are compact. You're going to have to get other players minutes. But I think she really wanted her A team to get more minutes cohesively together. And that's why she ultimately chose the lineup and the strategy that she did in this final friendly, in this final send-off game against Costa Rica. But I also think there's just a fundamental problem with this team, the way it's currently constructed, and it's something that I've talked about with Andre. I talked about it a little bit with Sam Mewis yesterday, the 2019 World Cup champion, who is now with Men in Blazers and did the alt cast last night on True TV. And I just think there's a fundamental mismatch in some of what the strengths of some players are versus the strengths of others. And I will try to be as neutral with this as possible, but I'm actually not that neutral about it. I think the U.S. is at its best when it uses its freakish athleticism that it has up front. Trin is one of the fastest players in the world. Soph is one of the fastest players in the world. Mao is one of the fastest players in the world. And if they can get teams on their heels and cause chaos, that is, to me, when they're at their absolute best. Because trying to, not that they're not technically sound players, not that they're not tactically sound players, they are far more skilled than to just be like, oh, they're athletes. But they're much more just really, really great players, really, really good players even, when they're in that mode. And it's like trying to play in the half court versus playing in the full court, or playing in the quarter court versus full court, really, in basketball. If you have LeBron James, sure, he can be great in the quarter court, but it's harder to score in the quarter court. If you ask LeBron, would you rather be in the quarter court or out on the break, he's going to tell you on the break 1,000 times out of 1,000. And I think fundamentally, Lindsey Horan in their midfield is more like a Chris Paul, who is absolutely brilliant. It's not like she's not athletic. It's not like she's not capable of doing anything with a soccer ball. She's one of the best 100 players in the world, has been that for a long time. She plays for one of the best teams in Europe in Olympic Lyon. She's the captain of the U.S. national team for a reason. This is not an anti-Lindsey Horan analysis. It's fundamentally like Chris Paul wanted to run sets in the half court. He wanted to have the ball in his hands, make the decisions, and be the one who executed, and would often slow things down as opposed to speed things up. And there's a play last night that's the perfect epitome of this. They have a situation to counter press and or counter attack and break out. And instead of just putting her head down and sprinting, Lindsey slows down so that she can receive the ball, slows down the break, eventually does get the ball because instead of being up, now she's kind of made it to where the ball's got to get to her. And then Mal Swanson has a free, if Lindsey just receives the ball, turns, and plays Mal into space, it's one-on-one with the keeper, and Mal Swanson, we like our odds there. Instead, she misses Mal, and they wind up having a much more difficult time creating a shot, and they miss an opportunity. And so what I'm curious of for this national team in this Olympic tournament is what kind of style do they play? Who is on the ball? How often? How up and down are they? How risk-averse are they? Are they trying to control tempo? Are they trying to control the ball? Or do they ultimately get up and down, send Trin down the flanks, send Soph and Mal down the flanks, Lynn Williams when she's in down the flanks, and play with players like Jaden Shaw, who much more fit that style than a Lindsey Horan? I thought Corbin Albert was really bad last night. She just lost the ball a ton, couldn't maintain it in the midfield. They lack control. So you have Corbin, who's playing for Rose Lavelle, who was scratched before the game because the field last night at Audi Field was a disgrace. Just patchy, bad, uneven. It looked like it was spray painted to try to make it look better on TV, but being there in person, it was bad. And so she had a little leg tightness in warm-ups, and they didn't want to risk anything with the heat and the field and everything. But Albert comes in, is not very effective. And I think you also have to think about the outside backs here and how they unlock the scoring prowess. And I will say, I'm not just being biased here towards the Washington Spirit players, but when Casey Kruger came in that game late, and the combination of her and Trin on the right side, Trin was the best player on the field by a mile and created 3 or 4 chances in the last 10 minutes where she turned it up because the game was ending and she didn't want to see that thing end in a tie. And she was like, I'm going to go make a play. But also the camaraderie and kind of the shape of the whole team with Casey on the field versus Emily Fox versus Jenna Neiswanger versus Crystal Dunn. Like, I think Casey gives them more protection because she's probably the best true, pure defender of the bunch. Nevertheless, what she can do in attack, and that frees Trin up to be Trin. And I still think she is as dangerous as anybody else in that team and should be a featured piece of it. Again, even though she's just 22 years old And it was not that long ago that she was taking a scooter to watch the U.S. women's national team play at Audi Field instead of being in the starting lineup and playing every single second. So that was last night at Audi Field. What's going to be happening at Commanders Field this fall? Who are the most important pieces on the roster? We'll continue our countdown coming up at 4:30. Who is our number 8 most important commander? We reveal number 10 was Dorrance Armstrong. Number 9 was Emmanuel Forbes. Who's number 8? Reveal that coming up in 15 minutes on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are counting down the top 10 most important commanders of the 2024 season. Coming up at 4:30, we're doing that daily through next week. Right now, though, Anthony, something else that we have been keeping an eye on, which is ESPN's top 100 list. This has been making the rounds, and I think today it's got people very, very angry. And I am trying to decide whether that is the right thing or not. Here's what it's got people angry. Number 26, Peyton Manning. Number 27, Randy Moss. Number 28 on the top 100 athletes of the 21st century, according to ESPN's panel of experts, which ultimately tabulated over 70,000 votes from people who cover sports all around the world and had big ballots, and then they narrowed it down within the sport, then they cross-checked it. They did a whole thing. Number 28 is Nikola Jokic, who finishes ahead of other basketball players, including Dwayne Wade, Kevin Durant, Dirk, Giannis, and those are the big ones that people are upset about. I would also say finishing ahead of Maya Moore feels a little bit ridiculous, which he barely did. On the W side, she won 4 championships. She was a multiple-time MVP. She is a multiple-time NCAA champion, but longevity is something. So at the very least, because Maya obviously retired because she was pursuing social justice causes, and while that is admirable as a human being, you don't get bonus points in rankings like this for that, but it does feel ridiculous. Like Maya Moore is insane. But the more I look at it and the more I understand it, I just think it's hard for us to stomach because it's hard sometimes to appreciate greatness in the middle of it. And I do think the championships and him only having won one and that being a bit of an aberration compared to the rest of how he's finished in the playoffs makes him finishing ahead of some of these other guys, I think particularly Wade, harder to swallow.
I would agree. At first, I thought you were saying you understand why he's at 28. I was about to say.
I mean, I do understand it. Like, there's just not a lot of 3-time MVPs in the history of the NBA.
It's not.
And he's one. Like, so, for instance, I'm going to read you 2 resumes. And I'm going to take out the years on this stuff.
Okay.
NBA 75th anniversary team, 2-time champion, 2-time finals MVP, 14-time All-Star, 2-time All-Star game MVP, 1-time league MVP, 10-time All-NBA, 4-time scoring leader, rookie of the year. That's one. I know it's hard to remember all that, but that's one.
It was a lot.
Then you have 1-time champion, 1-time finals MVP, 3-time league MVP, 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, 1-time conference finals MVP. Who has the better resume?
I'm going with the former.
I think I would agree. Based off the resume and the longevity.
Exactly. That matters.
I know it's 1 3-time MVP versus a 1-time MVP, but one dude's 10-time All-NBA. The other's 5-time.
Yep.
Because the former was Kevin Durant, and the latter was Nikola Jokic.
I'm taking Giannis's resume over Jokic's right now. And Giannis, he has a championship. He is a 2-time MVP. But for the disparity, or I guess the gap between Jokic, who has, I guess, one more MVP than Giannis, who's at 42, just seems I don't quite frankly understand it, to be honest.
I get that Jokic has been the best player in the league,
yes,
probably for the last couple of years here. But I don't think people, like Wade, for instance, I don't think people realized how good Dwayne Wade was at his peak.
Appreciate him.
Like, Wade got completely overshadowed by Kobe initially and then LeBron. But he was the second or third best player in the league for a while.
Flash, baby.
He was unbelievable at his, 2009 coming off the Olympics. Dwayne Wade had he was at least the third best player in the league behind LeBron and Kobe. At least. And he might have been better than Kobe at that point for that stretch, as Kobe was starting the descent of his career and D-Wade was at the absolute height of his powers. Again, that's not saying that one is actually, that's not saying Wade was the better career and should be higher on this list than Bryant, but in 2009, specifically coming off the Olympics, heading into ultimately what would be the championship years in Miami a couple years later, like Dwayne Wade was a 13-time All-Star, Finals MVP, 8-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Defense, like
gold medalist.
Yeah, the Olympic stuff. I mean, I get it. I get how great Jokic is. It just feels like that putting him over, like, and I think it's actually funny that I'm defending Durant. He's the one who feels like he's the most wrong, in the wrong spot here.
Mm-hmm.
Dirk is an interesting one over Giannis, but like Dirk has so much longevity that I'm okay with it. Like, does that mean that'll hold another 5 years? No. But for right now, okay, that's fine. The loyalty he showed, whatever that's worth to Dallas, one team for 20 years. But like, I'm not even a huge Durant guy, relatively speaking. Like, I don't know that I have him in my top 20 all-time NBA players. Where a lot of people, it's no-brainer, always the best scorer, best pure scorer ever. I'm like, yeah, he's great, but like, there's the winning doesn't, like, at that level, there's a level of impact on winning you have to have. And Jokic has had that certainly to an extent, but the one title is more of an aberration compared to his other playoff performances. And that's not to diminish his greatness. I'd rather have Nikola Jokic than basically anybody else in the sport when you combine his greatness and his durability right now. But if we're talking about career achievements to this point and we're not doing a projection,
Exactly.
to say Jokic over Durant when Durant is a 14-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA, 4-time scoring leader, that feels incorrect.
Yep, 2-time champion, MVP. It's just, I don't know. I guess people are like stuck in the moment. And again, I think you made a good point when you said, I hope they're not doing projections. Because, again, Jokic, he could very well, be better than, have a better career than Dwayne Wade, Kevin Durant, if he gets a couple of more titles, if he wins, an Olympic medal, things of that nature. But just going off, the 10 years that he's played in the NBA versus the careers these other guys have had, I just wouldn't put him past. I don't know if I would put him past. I wouldn't put him past D-Wade. I wouldn't put him past Kevin Durant. I still wouldn't put him past Giannis. Dirk, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't know if I would do Dirk.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there's, like, is it really that much difference once you add in the other athletes? Mike Trout is in here, Clayton Kershaw is in here, Marta, soccer player. Like, by the way, talk about a resume. 6-time World Player of the Year, won the Golden Ball for being the best player and the Golden Boot for most goals scored at the 2007 World Cup. She's still playing.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Miguel Cabrera at 33, the best hitter in baseball for, a decade? Back-to-back MVP. He was the last player in 2012, 2013 to win consecutive MVPs. Like, it just feels like a lot of these players
should be above him.
Considering their careers are over, should be over Jokic. Yeah. Because that's the thing, like, Jokic is, it's not a shot at Jokic's current greatness. I'm trying not to be like, and it's be like, oh, it's the American players, whatever. Like, I'm trying to check my bias and what we've thought of as the greatest players ever. Like, Jokic belongs in that. But even, like, he's one spot ahead of Michael Schumacher, who outside of Lewis Hamilton is probably the greatest F1 driver ever. And we're putting Jokic at 28? Yeah. Because Jokic is still 3-time MVP. That's hard to mess with. But 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. Got 5 less All-NBAs than Durant. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, yeah, I don't love this. But we'll find out. I don't know if they're releasing everybody tomorrow. They're just doing up to, like, number 10 tomorrow. But we did make our predictions earlier in the week for the top 5.
Yep.
And we will double-check when that comes out, either tomorrow or Friday, see which one of us got more right. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we reveal number 8 on our most important commanders of 2024. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube as well. If you'd like to watch the show at the Team 980, 25 hours from now, I'll be reading your YouTube comments and never read the comments. That's tomorrow at 5:30. But every day at 4:30, we are counting down from now until next Friday the top 10 most important commanders of the 2024-2025 season. Number 10 was defensive end Dorrance Armstrong, and number 9 was cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. And today, the reason that Forbes was number 9 is because we think he's really important for the present and the future, but even for the present, if he's really good, that solves a huge problem. But there is potentially a situation where even if he's not good, the team is all right. And today is another player who fits that build. Anthony, are you ready to reveal number 8?
I think so. Coming in at number 8.
Number 8
is left tackle.
Oh, there you go.
You can do it.
You can do it.
I think.
Mine's is about to have more of a Bruce Buffer, ring to it.
Yeah,
Coming in, number 8.
Yeah, we should avoid all things Bruce Buffer. He's very litigious. Coming in,
number 8
is Brandon Coleman, the rookie tackle out of TCU. And it's very similar to Forbes. If it works out, then you have solved a problem that has plagued you since Trent Williams left. Obviously, Forbes did not solve a problem since Trent Williams left, but it feels like that long since they've had a good corner around here. And it's at one of the most important positions in the sport. And not only that, in the long-term implications, and we're focused mostly on 2024, but oh my God, if he's their left tackle of the future, for real, and he's high level and shows some really good traits, they could develop into a Pro Bowl caliber player. Well, now that's one more position off the list that next year in the first round you're looking at as they try to build this thing out. I think the offensive line in general, and we're going to talk about the offensive line a lot more at 6 o'clock today as we'll do our positional group previews, which we will be doing daily here on the show, Pick 6 at 6 style. But the offensive line, I think, has questions at almost every position. I think right guard, you feel really good about Cosme. The question is more of, is he going to be good or is he going to be great? Biotish, I feel like you feel pretty confident, but how does he work, as the center of a new line, new system, new scheme? How does he work with Jaden? How much can we trust it with protections? Dak was a really cerebral quarterback who took care of a lot of stuff. If there's more on Biotish's plate, how does he handle it? So, there's some minor questions there that we feel pretty good about the answers. Wiley at right tackle, big question. Can he step up his play from last year? And will hopefully better play calling insulate him and make him perform at a fairly high level? Left guard, first of all, who's playing? Second of all, assuming the answer is Nick Allegretti, can he be more than a rotational caliber piece? Can he be a true starting caliber left guard? And then at left tackle, we literally don't know who's going to play it. But we know that Trent Scott has been a career backup. We know that Cornelius Lucas has been a career swing tackle, not someone, though he's been a free agent multiple times, that anybody has ever been like, we want that guy to be our left tackle for multiple years moving forward. And while Lucas has his strengths, specifically his strengths, Lucas is a mountain of a man. Great pass blocker, legitimately very, very good pass blocker at right and has been at left tackle. And that's great. Your offense is more limited with him on the field, and part of the reason I don't think anyone's been like, that's our starting tackle that we really want to commit to Lucas over the years, is because he doesn't have the mobility of a lot of the starting, especially high-end left tackles in this league. Pass blocking's great, but can you get out on the move? When the pocket moves, can you get to where you need to be in the time you need to get there? And Lucas, big, mountainous man, is not the most mobile of men. Scott's got a little bit mobility, but he's a little bit undersized. So what you wind up with then as the best possible outcome being Brandon Coleman. Not just because he's a rookie, not just because you drafted him, not just because of the contractual control, but because he is both a mountain of a man and very mobile. He's got great feet. He's got great athleticism. He's got great size. The question is, Ant, can he put it all together, and how quickly can he put it all together? And that's why Brandon Coleman comes in at number 8, because if he does, he unlocks some stuff with their offense. If he doesn't, they're not screwed. There is the floor of Cornelius Lucas most likely underneath them, but that means that they really need to seriously consider what Coleman's future is and what they do for the future at left tackle.
I think Brandon Coleman in general, just coming into the NFC East, he already had a tall task, having to go up against the Micah Parsons of the world, the Brian Burns of the world, the Bryce Huff with the Eagles now. So that was already going to be challenging. And then also, I think learning the position in general at the NFL level was going to be the other challenge. And also considering because he also played a little guard and a little tackle while at TCU. So I think, again, just learning, and we're going to get into it later when you talk about, the coaches that are going to be helping him facilitate or navigate learning the position, how instrumental they're going to be to his growth. But I think if he does end up putting it together, he's going to be the guy that we've been searching for since Trent Williams left. That stalwart left tackle that, we've had in this franchise. We've had the Trent Williams. We had the Chris Samuels. We had the Joe Jacobys. Can this guy be the next best thing that we've had?
Yeah, it's just really hard to get left tackles in the third round. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the best left tackles in the league, Trent was a top 10 pick. Andrew Thomas, first-round pick. Jordan Mailata, the rare exception, rugby star in Australia, who's just this insane athlete that is coached up by Jeff Statland into being one of the best left tackles in the league. Rashawn Slater was a first-rounder, I believe. Laramie Tunzel, first-rounder. Christian Darrisaw, first-rounder. You look at the best left tackles in this league, and you are talking about guys that are first-round picks because that combination of size, speed, strength, hand placement, the finer points that you see in college, you're like, oh, that projects well to the NFL. If you have those things, you don't fall. The position's too important. And so I do think there's a bit of just thinking oh, he's got a bunch of traits, he's going to work out. That would be cutting against the grain of where you find starting left tackles. It's just not how it typically works, especially the good ones. The good ones show it in college. But I do think if you want to be an optimist, if you want to spin it, and you want to say, how can Coleman be a guy that bucks the trend? You look at what he did at TCU and you go, oh, well, he didn't get the chance to show it. Because he, is a late bloomer, right? He didn't start playing football until he was in high school. We talked about this around draft time. Just an incredible story. Military kid, moved around a bunch, got to, was a basketball player in high school, started playing football late, went JUCO, goes to TCU, plays his best season where they go to the national title game and grades out really, really well at left tackle. And then last year they have a bunch of injuries and he's got to play guard. Well, now all of a sudden he's playing guard. Are you going to draft him at tackle in the first rounder after he hasn't played tackle in a year? Probably not. Third rounder, okay. And now we're going to find out if Adam Peters is right in his evaluation and Bobby Johnson, the O-line coach, is right in their evaluation that this kid can play left tackle. But there's a lot to like. Great arm length, really strong, great feet, is comfortable on some level in space. But it's going to take coaching to get him there. And it's just not a position that there's a lot of great players that are first rounders. But if all of a sudden, he solidifies them for this season, huge, huge boost to the offense. But longer term, in terms of importance, when we're, next February, March, April, May, and we're starting to do all our scouting stuff for the combine and the draft, and we're looking at positions of need for Washington, if they don't have to draft left tackle, that is enormous for them moving forward. And especially because you then have left tackle and quarterback on really cheap contracts, and those are really expensive positions, and that is a ton of money you can use to build out the roster elsewhere and sign basically whoever you want for whatever money. So a lot of implications if Brandon Coleman is good, and that's why he lands at number 8 on our list. So, with that said, the second part of what we've done with this countdown, we continue to do with you on the phones next at 301-230-0980. What are your expectations for Brandon Coleman in 2024? Your expectations for Coleman could be anything from I don't expect him to play at all to I expect him to be, a Pro Bowler. Whatever you got, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. just want to let the Prince guitar go forever. Why would you play this, Anthony? You want me to talk over this? Like what?
Somebody talking to me?
This is one of those times where the YouTube stream thing strikes again.
Oh,
because
they can't hear.
Because the people listening on the radio are like, yeah, just shut up and let Prince play his guitar. And the people on the YouTube stream are like, look at Anthony dance to no music because we can't hear it. The When Doves Cry instrumental was playing, people on YouTube.
Yes.
And is there anything that you think you do in life as well as Prince played a guitar?
No.
I think that's the correct answer.
Sadly, no.
I don't think I say my name as well as Prince played guitar.
Yeah. I'm really trying to think. There are a few things that I do really well.
What do you think you do really well?
So I play tic-tac-toe very well. Like, you won't be able to beat me. But I won't. I probably won't win either.
So you think you're really good at tic-tac-toe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't win, but you also don't win. So I think it's
but that's like,
yeah,
that's not that hard.
Okay.
You kind of have to be like, all due respect, you kind of have to be an idiot to lose at tic-tac-toe, and you kind of have to be playing an idiot to win.
All right, this is what I'm good at. Connect Four. I'm very good at Connect Four.
Ooh, I think we should have a games day. That sounds fun.
Are you good at Connect Four?
I don't think I'm bad.
Okay.
Although it's hard. Like Connect Four is larger test than tic-tac-toe because it is ultimately about just paying attention. There is some strategery.
There's a lot of strategery to Connect Four.
But at the end of the day, like you are just playing a game, and if you pay attention and you can see, like it's Connect Four is somewhere between tic-tac-toe and chess. Because you can set stuff up and there's strategies and there's different stuff.
Yeah.
But like tic-tac-toe, if you just remotely pay attention, every game ends in a draw.
Yeah.
There is no special move that you can make other than someone getting bored and doing something dumb.
Yeah.
Chess, like you can get set up pretty good 5, 6, 7 moves out by like people who really know what they're doing. Connect Four, there's like some of that, but if someone is paying attention, like there's only so much you can telegraph because it's not like you can do surprise. It's not like in chess where it's like, oh wow, you move that bishop. Like the amount of possibilities are just a lot smaller. You can only put the pieces in so many spots.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to set things up if people shut stuff down early.
Yeah. I still think I'm pretty good at Connect Four.
Okay. Do you have it at your house?
Yes, I can bring it in tomorrow for sure.
Okay. I think tomorrow we should play Connect Four.
So I have a ton of games actually. So I have my TV. My TV is in like this, I don't know how to describe it. It's a big space like in the area, and then like on the side it has a whole bunch of like cubbies.
Yeah,
and down
there's a
below
name for that. Now I'm blanking on it as well. I was gonna be like, you dummy, it's called this, and now I can't remember the name of it either.
I can't. But below my TV in like one of the cubbies, I have like 10 to 12 games. I love games.
What's your favorite board game?
My favorite board game?
Yeah.
Connect Four.
Okay, what's your second favorite board game?
Monopoly.
Yeah, Monopoly we couldn't play because it would take forever.
It does take a long time, but I'm one of those like super competitive guys, and I will play and play and play until I win.
Well, I mean, the problem is whether you win or lose, you have to keep playing and playing and playing.
I don't get tired though, Craig. I love buying property.
Do you have any house rules?
You got to go around go. You can't buy any property the first go round. You got to wait. Outside of that, you can do whatever you want.
Well, typically you're not going to be able to buy any property the first time around. Oh, like buy any property, not just houses and hotels. You can't buy anything. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting house rule.
Yeah.
Got
to get around go, and if you end up in jail, welp. Yep.
I feel like I liked Battleship a lot growing up, but it's
cool.
Also kind of an annoying game sometimes, just because it's kind of luck, but also kind of not. What else? There's some other like fun games that we've discovered, like newer games that are not like the classics that we've bought, that we've played with like some friends of ours. there is one game called Smartass, which is pretty fun. And it's got like you like roll a dice, and then it's got like 3 categories of questions. And then and it's like who, what, where, and it's like who am I? So you have to like guess historical figures, facts, and then there's like geography adjacent stuff. But it's funny because depending on what space you land on, you're either like a smart ass, a dumbass, or I can't remember what the other ones are, and you like go forward and backward spaces based off what you land on.
So it's almost like a guess who.
A little bit. It's just like it's a trivia game. There was another game. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of it, but we played it with my cousin and his now fiance, at the time girlfriend, and it's like a team game, and you have to like do some math together and stuff. So you can imagine how great that went for me. Yeah. And we played it, and we did all the different pairings of the 4 of us. So it was me and Rachel, and then me and Monica, and then me and Ben. And guess who went 0 for 3 in the math game?
His name starts with Craig and ends with Hoffman.
That is correct. That is correct. That was not my favorite day because the I also like talk junk to my cousin in the ways that like for you would be like, this is familiar, but Rachel had not heard me talk junk like that before, and like Ben and I were going back and forth, and she's like, you guys are so rude, and I was like, you're right, but that's not the point. Let me tell my little cousin that he sucks.
Yeah,
I don't actually mean it. I love him dearly.
Yeah.
But right now, I want him to feel bad about himself because I'm playing him in a competitive environment.
I feel you on that one.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to play what tomorrow?
Connect 4.
Playing Connect 4 tomorrow.
I can't wait.
Okay. All right. We had someone in the YouTube chat say they're really good at Tekken 8.
That's a game. That's a video game,
yeah,
actually.
we're doing. We got Stratego. We got Risk.
I don't know those games.
Yeah, Risk is that's like a Monopoly length game. It's a long play.
It's longer than Monopoly?
It can be.
Oh no,
it could also be short. That. But Risk is like a whodunit kind of game.
Okay.
I believe, if I'm thinking of the right one.
Whodunit?
Or I'm mixing my games. Now I sound like a buffoon. Always possible. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. That's what happens when we don't get calls on something. We talk about other stuff. Sometimes it be like that. At 5:30 today, take command. Little mailbag. Little talk about Brandon Ayuk. Really, really fun conversation with Logan about ranking season and what we look for when we actually do our rankings. Speaking of ranking season and preview season, our offensive line preview coming up at 6 p.m. But next, we go to Las Vegas, where Josh Robbins is at NBA Summer League, and the Athletics Wizards Insider will talk to us about Alex Sarr's, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 misses last night. His Summer League record is that cause for concern. Robbins next. Hour number 2 of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And last night there was history. History, I tell you, in NBA Summer League. It was not the best of history when it comes to the Washington Wizards' number 2 overall pick, but is it cause for concern? That's our top story. Let's talk about it with someone who does this on the regular.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Our pal Josh Robbins from The Athletic covering NBA Summer League. Josh, how are you, my friend?
I was there all right. I saw every one of those missed shots, and right here they occurred just a few feet from me, really.
It is the beauty of Summer League, right? They
it.
give you good seats. At least that's nice for media out there.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. This is my favorite event on the calendar, by far. It's a great event for a reporter, and it's a great event for an NBA fan. It really is. So I'm happy to be here, taking care not to get sunburnt too badly.
Yeah.
I'm all right. Don't worry about me.
Yeah, no, it's a fun event. I haven't been in a long time, but it's just awesome because the whole league is there, and it's very cool to see everybody in one place. And as you said, it's amazing for a reporter. But the day job for you is, I'm sure you're working on some other things that we'll be reading in The Athletic over the next couple of months and reporting some things out. But in the immediacy, Josh, that 0 of 15 is startling on the box score. But I will just ask you open-ended before I give any opinion or any other context on the matter. As you're watching it and as you are digesting Alex Sarr, the number 2 pick for the Wizards, take and miss 15 shots, what is going through your mind and what does it mean, if anything?
Well, it was a bad offensive performance. There's no other way to describe it. It wasn't quite as terrible as the box score makes it look, but that's not saying much. I suspect that he took a lot of shots that he won't be taking when the regular season starts. But beyond that, is it cause for concern? No and yes. It confirms exactly what the scouting reports offensively said about him heading into the draft, that he's got a lot of work to do. He's extraordinarily raw offensively in terms of his shooting, and that is a issue. But they knew that going in. They know that he's a defensive first player, and they also know that he's only 19, and for the next 3 years or so at least, the Wizards are going to be in full-blown development mode. So they have the opportunity to be patient, but they're going to have to develop him, and if they can't develop him, then it's a problem.
Right.
Then it's a problem.
Right. The thing that I noticed in watching it, Josh, and I will admit, I was doing a million things yesterday, including as at the Audi field for the U.S. Women's National Team game last night, so I didn't get this chance to watch this full game live. But in watching the highlight back of it, and of course the problem with the highlight is that they don't show you things that don't happen, right? So I don't know in terms of game flow, but I did get to watch all 15 of the shots. They looked like good shots. It looked like the decision-making, processing-wise, was good. He needs to ultimately make the shots. Is that the way you saw it? And was there anything that those that may have done what I did and watched just a highlight or a cut-up of the misses missed in terms of the context of the game, about his game, that is cause for concern beyond just missing what were properly taken good shots?
Well, I just watched all 15 shots myself to prepare for this grilling. You know? So what I was struck by that I didn't quite feel when I was watching it live was just how close so many of the defenders were to him. Now, because he's 7 feet tall, he was able to get his shot off on three-pointers, but he's got to take more care in taking shots where the defender is farther away. And in terms of the shots within the rim, well, he got blocked twice, one of them by Donovan, maybe got blocked 3 times, twice by Donovan Clingan, and on most of those shots he looked out of control. The thing about Alex Sarr is this. He's 7 feet tall. He is a 7 foot tall person. He's a perimeter player who doesn't hit shots right now in a 7-footer's body. He has no low post game, none, which is okay if they can succeed in teaching him that. It's okay if they can get his shot right, and it doesn't look broken. I think if there's anything to be optimistic about him offensively, if you're a Wizards fan, it's that the shot isn't broken. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I do think that, like, there's specific things you can look at with some of the footwork and stuff that that Will Dawkins and company knew when they drafted him. The scouting or not the scouting staff, the player development staff will be working on him, and that's how you fix. Again, it's not broken, but that's how you improve on the jumper, which is something that I think is going to be interesting to watch happen. We saw some of the improvements that some of the Wizards players made last year, but I think the one thing that you look for me at least, Josh, in summer leagues, is Josh Robbins, of course, Wizards beat reporter for The Athletic, is with us from Las Vegas, is a mentality, is a tenacity, is a like what's going on upstairs in a guy's head. What did you make of the rest of Alex Sarr's game as he's missing shots last night? Because he does have some blocks. He does have some other things that he does well in that game. But again, for those of us that didn't get a chance to watch the full thing, and for someone who's been covering it as long as you have and has that level of expertise, what do you make of kind of the whole of his game last night once you get past the galling 0 for 15 headline?
Well, this is the bright spot. Everything he does on defense. Is he all defensive level yet? No way. But the raw materials are there for the most part. He moves very well for a 7-footer. As I said, he's almost like a perimeter player in the way he moves. And he did affect shots. He did block shots. He did affect shots. Rebounding. He showed pretty good hands, better hands than advertised. So the effort was there. And all right, so it's terrible that he missed all 15 shots. Not good. But I like that he took 15 shots.
Right. Remember
2 or 3 years ago, when Johnny Davis was in his first whole summer league, it was almost to the point where he didn't take many shots. And I'd rather have somebody who is going to continue to let it fly and have some confidence than someone who's timid. And Alex Sarr is not timid. And his body language last night is fine. If I had missed 15 shots, my body language would have been horrendous. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, so many of the shots were short, particularly from distance. He's in decent shape now, but he's got to get into a lot better shape. And he's got to add a lot more strength, which is exactly, in terms of adding muscle, that's exactly what the scouting reports said about him heading into the draft. And the scouting reports were right. He's got to get better at that.
Speaking of your game, Josh, I did ask when I saw that the Wizards had brought their own court out there. We had Chase on from Monumental, and I asked Chase, well, when the Wizards are not using it, are they going to allow any kind of media pickup games on the court that they brought? And he said he didn't know yet. So I'm going to follow up with you. Have there been any media games on the Wizards practice court? No? Why not?
Actually, by the way, I got a big piece about this coming tomorrow morning. It'll be interesting.
Okay.
For everybody listening. But you got to have a card key to get into this ballroom.
Well, get Winger on the phone and get yourself a key card, Josh. What are we doing here? Like, Michael can't and Will, they can't have players on the court 24/7. It's just sitting there. They brought it all the way out to Las Vegas. Might as well get some use,
If I were to be on there just goofing around, just through the sheer vibes I would give, the next time Alex Sarr goes out there, he'd go shoot 0 for 50. So I don't think anyone wants that.
All right. We'll look forward to the piece on the court. I'm actually very much looking forward to that because it's a very cool thing that they did, and I'm sure I don't even know the half of it, and now you do, and you're going to tell us. So look forward to that tomorrow morning in The Athletic. Josh Robbins with us from Las Vegas. All right, on the non-Alex Sarr category, Josh, Bub Carrington's kind of been the darling of Summer League for the Wizards so far. He's been productive each and every time out. What have you seen from the other lottery pick from the Wizards?
Well, I like him. I like how competitive he is. I like that he brings toughness. And if I were a Wizards fan, I would like that he's hitting shots. As basic as it sounds. And remember, he's not even 19 yet. Several days he turns 19. So here's someone who possibly, maybe, the Wizards have found a player whom the rest of the lottery undervalued. He has no problem handling the ball. He does a lot of things that a point guard, upper level point guard needs to do. He can find the open man. He can send a pinpoint pocket pass. And I think that the playmaking aspect of his game is going to improve when he's around a full team of legit NBA players. So there's someone to build on here. And since we're talking about shooting, well, he's hit 42% of his threes, which doesn't mean he's going to come even close to league average come the regular season. But I think it does indicate that the possibility to be an upper-level shooter is there. A lot to like.
Yeah, when you think of 2024 specifically for this team, we know so much of what we're doing is just forecasting long term, but in the immediacy, like because he's a bigger guard and he has real size, can he and Poole play together? Is that something that is feasible and maybe changes the calculus as the Wizards still are one of the teams that's floating around and trying to figure out what they want to do with Tyus Jones?
Well, I don't think they're not going to resign. It's highly unlikely, I would say. You can cite this to the Athletic. Highly unlikely they re-sign Tyus Jones. Now, I will say this: I didn't expect Tyus Jones to be unattached on July 17th. Maybe things get so desperate for him that things change, but I think it's highly unlikely that he comes back to Washington. Can Poole and Carrington play together? I think we're going to see that at times for sure. I don't think Bub Carrington is going to be in the starting five on opening night, but he's going to play heavily. And for a team that needs to finish near the bottom in order for its rebuild to go right, there's no harm in experimenting.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And Carrington has looked pretty good defensively, and he's got some size.
Right.
So I've been impressed. I've been overall impressed with him, and even more just kind of with the spirit and charisma and competitiveness that he plays with.
I feel like Will Dawkins is doing cartwheels in his hotel room if he heard that, because that's all the stuff that they look for. Is that, especially at this point where they are, like they want the guys that compete, they want the guys who bring good energy to the building. Like that is such a positive. It seems like for what they're building, and it seems like Bub has that in absolute spades.
Well, I have a little anecdote for you that you might like.
Let's
After
go.
the second game, the team that night the team stunk. I mean, it was not good. It was badly outplayed against Houston, and Carrington didn't play well himself. Well, I got him off to the side after the game and asked him some kind of bird's eye view questions about how his game is translating to the court, and he was so unwilling to talk about himself that I thought it was actually a good sign. He was so upset about the way the team and how he played, but more really about how the team played that night, that he was I wouldn't say he was disconsolate, but he had an edge to him, and I think that's a good thing. Right?
Yeah.
Now you don't want to let a loss linger, but you don't want to get to a point where you accept losses, even in a relatively meaningless exhibition. So can he maintain that over the course of 82 games? Will the losses sap his spirit? Well, we're going to see, but I think this was a welcome sign, actually, from him. And it's probably one of the reasons why the Wizards front office likes him.
Josh Robbins from The Athletic with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, last big topic to chop up here, Josh, that I want to get to with you is kind of something that popped into my head as we were talking about Tyus, which is we're now a year plus, but like a year and a full offseason almost into this Dawkins winger era. And we've seen how they've remade the roster, some of the moves that they've made, some of the moves that they didn't make. Kuzma at the deadline, Kuzma so far this summer, Tyus at the deadline, and we're going to see what the return is on some of these guys that they kept around. And, for instance, Tyus, they could have gotten, I think, a couple of seconds has been reported. You would know better than me at the deadline. What do we think of how they've managed the assets through 1 year of the rebuild? Because we know that while the cupboard wasn't exactly stocked full of goodies when they took over, that between what they did with Beal, what they've done with some of the other players that they moved on from, and what they will continue to do, the asset management is how you really manage a rebuild in the NBA, along with quality drafting and getting really lucky in the lottery. How have they done on the asset management part through your eyes through a year?
I think they've done well. They did not sell low. They did not trade Kuzma when really the incoming picks were not very good, not very impressive. They sold high on Daniel Gafford. They sold high on Denny Avdia, to the point with Avdia where the rest of the league was surprised they were able to wrangle 2 first-round picks plus a pair of second-round picks. We'll see what happens. Malcolm Brogdon's going to start the season with the Wizards. It'll be interesting to see who they bring back or what they bring back in any trade for him by the deadline. The cupboard wasn't just half full when they took over. It was almost empty. And it's one of the reasons why this rebuild is going to take longer than the ones in Orlando, OKC. Because those teams maximized their assets in OKC to a ridiculous degree. And Washington had almost nothing partly because Bradley Beal had a no-trade clause and insisted on only going to one team. So they came in with all the odds stacked against them, and they've steadily rebuilt it. Now, they're still not where they need to be, but they've done pretty well. And the next big test is, I think, Kuzma at the trade deadline. Are they able to bring back a bigger haul for him, the kind of haul that they were unable to generate last February?
Do you think I feel like there's still like one too many bigs, force fives on this roster. Do you think that there's another move to come at some point this summer as we move towards training camp?
Well, yes, there certainly are too many bigs. There's no question about that. I think it's probably unlikely that they make another trade over the summer. We're talking basically about, like, can they move Marvin Bagley? Can they move Rashawn Holmes?
Right.
The market for a backup 5, particularly a backup 5 who makes over $10 million a year, as I think Rashawn does, and I think Marvin does, not strong. Not a strong market for that. So I don't anticipate them moving a big, and if they do, it certainly won't be for a return that would have them doing cartwheels.
Got it. Makes sense. Bagley, by the way, I just did the old Google, makes $12.5 this year, so it is the final year of his deal. So expiring perhaps is someone that, depending on what the Wizards are getting returned elsewhere, like that's a good cash number if they want to, finagle a trade somewhere else. As teams are trying to, obviously a lot of these teams up against the aprons, dollar for dollar matching. The math is getting more complicated, Josh, which is very, very bad for me. You do a great job, though. Handle it very well. Enjoy the rest of your time out in Las Vegas. We always appreciate it here on the radio. And good luck with everything else. And we look forward to the story tomorrow morning on the court. I'm really pumped about that. Like, genuinely pumped about to read that story.
Awesome. Bless you for saying that, Craig. And you asked some darn good questions. Better questions than the ones I asked.
I'm doing my best, Josh. Thank you, sir. Have a good one. That is Josh Robbins, everybody. Anthony, clearly we need to cut that for an open. Whenever someone compliments me, we need to remind people at least once an hour about it. We appreciate Josh Robbins greatly. You got it marked?
Yes, I have it marked. Should I also play it as a part of the best of the show?
That it might have to be.
It's a candidate. It's a candidate
for no other reasons than my ego. When we get back, man, am I playing into the character that some of y'all have of me? When we get back here on the Hoffman Show. Logan Paulson's thoughts join the program. Take command, answering a mailbag question that led us into a discussion of the Brandon Ayuk situation. But before that, what do we look for during ranking season? Like, Logan and I have done a ton of rankings, position groups and certain players. How do we actually do those rankings? What is our rubric? What is our criteria? It was a really interesting question that kind of also plays into player evaluation when it comes to draft and free agency and all that kind of stuff. So we wanted to play that for you here on the radio. Take command next. And then our offensive line position group preview coming up at 6 p.m. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, which I tell you, not only to tell you another way that you can consume the show, say you're driving home, you want to get home, flip on YouTube on your smart TV, search the Team 980, and there we are. Same radio show you love to listen to, you can listen to right there in your house, just like the other sports talk shows that you like to watch on TV. But also, because if you check out our on-demand content and you want to leave a comment, we might read it. 24 hours from now, Thursdays, 5:30, never read the comments. Great interview with Josh Robbins at 5 o'clock. If you just missed that, definitely worth checking the podcast later on Alex Sarr's less than stellar record-breaking night. But also plenty of positives coming out of Bub Carrington's game out in Las Vegas. Right now, though, a little take command for you on a Wednesday. Logan and I answering a mailbag question that led us down quite the rabbit hole when it comes to player evaluation and rankings, and ultimately that landed us on Brandon Ayuk. Definitely worth the play for you here. A little bit of take command on the Hoffman Show.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Take Command podcast. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen, and it's a Mailbag Monday on a Tuesday afternoon, Logan, because sometimes that be how the schedule goes in the summer.
That's how schedules be scheduling, man.
Yeah, we're very excited for the Thursday pod, the late week pod this week. We have a fun charity Commanders quiz challenge. Honestly, don't even know. I scheduled it. We have a guest like Bob Barker situation who's going to come in and quiz us. So Logan and I are going to look dumb on the late week pod when we are terrible at Commanders trivia. But we figured
I'm
we'd
so
look
worried
smart.
about that.
We're going to try to look smart with questions that we picked for the mailbag, Logan. They were just trying to get life is the yin and yang, the zen of balance.
No, 100%. Yeah, I was like, you told me we were doing that, and I was like, that's going to be terrible, man. Like, I know a lot about Commanders and Washington football team history and all that kind of stuff, but some of the trivia stuff's pretty outside my area of expertise. So this one's going to be a nice, easy fastball right down the middle. The other one's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. I know the premise is like a chuckle for charity, and I was like, boy, are you asking us to be set up for success on the chuckle part?
Yeah.
So that'll be fun later in the week, and then we're working on some other stuff as well. Of course, training camp's less than 10 days away.
Crazy.
At this point. It's absolutely bonkers, so we'll have practice and such to talk about before long. But look, we spent so much time on ranking everything in sight the last couple of weeks, because that is kind of what happens this time of year as we preview things from a bunch of different aspects. And you actually got a question that I thought was interesting to start off our mailbag for today, which is basically, what's the criteria? And as someone who does a sports talk radio show daily and looks at a million lists and is always curious in that, I do think it's probably good for us to talk about how we've done some of our rankings. And specifically, I think the one that it was in response to that's probably our most popular rankings that we've done now for a couple of years in a row is our position group rankings, right? So when we look at, hey, who's the best quarterback or the best running back group or the best whatever in the NFL or in the NFC East in our case, what are you basing that off of who's the best, who's the worst, and how we line those up relative to each other in between?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think there's a couple things that go into the bucket. One is I kind of try to approach it as if I was a GM, right? And if I was kind of making a team, who are the pieces that I'd want to be involved in, right? So when you're the GM, there's a couple different criteria that go into it. It's age, it's potential. They're thinking more kind of longitudinally as opposed to when I put my coaching hat on, it's like, who's the best player right now, right? And then there's also my personal talent evaluation where it's like, I watched this guy 10 times last year. And I went back and rewatched his film a couple times, and there's something about him that I like that maybe the other national media correspondents don't like. And so for me, it's weighing all of those factors. I think a good example of that was when we were doing tight end rooms, and it was like, oh, you were like Dallas Goedert is the number one guy in the division. I kind of was like, I actually like Tony Ferguson a little bit better, or Ferguson, the guy in Dallas, a little bit more. I just think he's got a more complete game. Now, if we're looking from a coaching perspective, and a talent evaluation, that's what those kind of coincide. But if I put my GM hat on, it's like, Dallas Goedert's probably the guy because he has the height, weight, speed, kind of the explosiveness that would kind of push him into that number one group. So I think it's all those things coming together. And I think, in the question, it kind of asks, like, what is the degree of separation? And very rarely in the NFL is there a drastic degree of separation. Obviously, there are certain examples, like if you're taking George Kittle versus the tight end in Miami currently, right? It's maybe the best guy in the NFL versus someone who's kind of a average to below average player at the position, right? And there's a huge discrepancy there, and that's represented usually in the financial elements of the contract. But I think I think a good example of that is maybe like B-Rob and Saquon Barkley, or the Philadelphia running back rooms. Like I remember talking through that pretty extensively and being like, in actuality, the difference in terms of effect on the team is marginal, right? However, when you take Saquon out of New York and you put him behind arguably the best offensive line in football with a quarterback who can run the ball, and they've done such a good job of getting their running backs in space over the last 4 years, like that becomes a crazy value add. So again, like the value is not just the player, it's also the scheme. So that's really like a long roundabout way to say that it's multifactorial, it's very subjective, and it's situation dependent, really.
Yeah, mine's just vibes.
Vibes.
Straight vibes.
Vibes.
Yeah, vibes and how good's your beard? No, for me it's a combination. Like, one, I would say for the rankings that we've done, it's about this year. So things like age only matter to the extent that I'm looking at your experience as a positive or your potential decline as a negative, but I'm not trying to project that 2-3 years down the road. I'm not taking in contract even. Like, I'm not going to rank someone above another because at dollar for dollar, they're a better value. Like, I'm just looking at, okay, we're lining up in the playground. I'm trying to win as many games as I can in 2024. Who am I picking? Like, that's actually the easiest way to describe it. Now, that is going to be influenced by some of the schematic stuff that you're talking about, right? Like, Saquon is enhanced in Philly in a way that was pretty rough for him in New York, where he was kind of asked to be the hero, where Philly, it's like, we're going to set you up to be successful because we have the right personnel around you, and we think schematically Kellen Moore will try to get Saquon the ball in space, and like that's been a hallmark of Sirianni throughout multiple OCs now, and was a hallmark of his back when he was doing that himself. So I think that's like the basic answer, right? Is like, who would you want to have on your team? Right. And I think another, and that doesn't necessarily always translate in ways that are as visible, I think, to fans, which goes to, I think, what is actually the best example of this that we've done recently, which is there's a huge disconnect on the Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott discussion when it comes to best quarterback in the NFC East. And for me, the easy way to describe it is Dak does more things well than Jalen does. So Hurts does a couple of things really, really well, but it's a very finite small, like 2 or 3. Like, he runs the ball really well. He throws the ball to the outside pretty well. And, there's a couple other things that he does at a high level. But, like, those are his 2 superpowers. Dak has the entire playbook in his pocket at the line of scrimmage, is effective at communicating it, so you're in more good plays more often before the snap. He's very, very good at diagnosing post-snap. He has every throw available to him in the book, deep, short, middle of the field, outside, everything. He's got good touch and good accuracy and all that stuff. And so that wide variety of potential good outcomes and the consistency with which he gets them is a separator, even though a couple years ago Jalen Hurts was, MVP level, without a doubt. But snap in, snap out, I'd rather have Dak Prescott. And so I think those are some of the things that we look at is, how consistent is a player, how much can they do, right? Versatility matters. Not just like, he can kind of do a bunch of stuff all right, but like guys like Saquon or guys like Dak in their own ways at their positions, they do a bunch of different things that you want that position to be able to do really, really well. And then you factor in kind of the pieces around them. Dak gets certainly a boost from CD and the other way around. Saquon gets a boost from the Eagles' offensive line. And that kind of ultimately paints a full picture of what I think that it is that goes into the rankings that we've done, especially the last couple of weeks this offseason.
Yeah, and I think, like, when you watch a lot of film and we watch a lot of football like we do, I think certain things pop to light that maybe, and I think that's what we're trying to illuminate there are those little variables. Like I think Dak Prescott's a great example of this. Like I know he has the reputation nationally of being a little bit, like chokes in the big moment or there's a lack of consistency. But when you watch down-to-down throws, like that's the guy you want helming your offense. And there's really not a lot of questions about it, in my opinion. Obviously, like if you're going to run an offense that's built for Jalen Hurts, where we're going to run kind of the NFL triple option, where we're reading defensive ends, we're getting out of the pocket, we've got the passing option on the screen outside, like then I might change my opinion because the schematically it's a little different. But like obviously I'm a high school offensive coordinator, and the things that you value most are the players that let you do the most things, are the players that don't restrict what you're doing. And I think it's the same thing in this game. It's the same thing in the NFL. It's the same thing when we talk to NFL coaches. Obviously, like I think Kyle Shanahan's an interesting example of this because it's like, hey, we got Brock Purdy and we've kind of built around him. But one of the reasons he ends up getting the job is because he let Kyle do more than he'd been accustomed to with his previous quarterbacks. Like Kyle can insulate a quarterback like it's nobody's business. But having a guy that can create off schedule, make some tough throws over the middle, be more of a playmaker, like Kyle went with the playmaker. And I think ultimately that's what we're doing. Like when you watch Hurts, for example, there's a deliberateness that is there with his feet. He's got to see throws. He's still kind of developing as a passer, and I think Dak is there. And I think that's where that subtlety comes in. And when you're talking about levels, like that was another thing they mentioned in the question. It's small. Like Dak and Jalen's maybe different because I feel like there's a pretty big discrepancy between the two of them. Like I think Dak's probably like a top 6-7 player. I think Jalen's probably down in that 10, 11, 12 range. And again, they're close, but in terms of a guy that's going to elevate your roster and I don't have to work around as much, it's Dak. And I think like that's where it seems like there's a definitive one too. Now, you take CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, and it's kind of like, I don't know how you feel about it, Craig, but it feels to me like they're almost the same. You know what I mean? Like they're very, very similar.
Yeah, they go about it differently, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to get similar-ish results,
right? Like
production-wise.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. Is like A.J. Brown wins with horsepower, so vertical speed, strength down the field. He's a true X. CeeDee Lamb is maybe not a true X, but he's a better F, he's a better Z, and he can play X for you, and he has more route running nuance, but lacks that vertical horsepower. Still a great player, and just depends on, to me, that's like, 6 in one, half dozen in another. Like, if you're like, gun to your head, who could you pick? Like, I don't really have a preference, it depends on the offense I want to run, and I think that's where those decisions become a little bit more challenging in terms of grading it out and ranking the difference between players, because I don't think there's that big of a difference between them. It comes that comes down to schematic usage more than anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's also why, like, I think that what's happening in San Francisco, sidebar for a second, is so fascinating right now. The news broke, right? We're recording this. It's now 3 o'clock on Tuesday. So an hour and a half ago or whatever it was, Mike Garafolo and NFL Network broke the news that Brandon Ayuk has officially requested a trade.
No.
And I think that, like, we've just, for people listening, like, aren't you guys going to talk about that? Seems like a big deal considering how much time you spent with Jaden Daniels. We have quite a bit. The beauty of a podcast is it's on demand. So just scroll back a little bit in the archive, and you got that there. And we'll have some more coverage on the Hoffman Show. So if you want to flip over to the Hoffman Show feed, assuming that you're listening to this sometime after 7 o'clock on Tuesday night, you'll have something there. But with Ayuk, like, Ayuk's a phenomenal wide receiver. He probably is a better pure player in most offenses than, say, Deebo Samuel. If I was Kyle, you would know better than me. You know Kyle, you know that offense inside and out. If I was Kyle from the outside, the way I see it, I'd rather have Deebo than I would have Brandon Ayuk, and which is a decision that they seem to have potentially contractually made. We'll see, if they can just get Ayuk to play out this year on this contract, they can make this decision and see how Deebo plays out this year. He battled some injuries last year, et cetera, et cetera. But because of the versatility and like how many different guys can do what Deebo does, like 4 in the entire league, versus what Ayuk can do, which is, let's say it's 12 to 15 guys, even at that level. Like Ayuk is special, but is the drop off to, I'll use Terry. Ayuk, I think, is a better player than Terry at this stage in their careers.
Sure.
I think
but
most
is the
GMs,
drop off that crazy?
But the drop off's not very significant. And so I think that's the thing that's interesting, right? Is you have the uniqueness of certain players or the importance of certain positions. Is a certain defensive end more well-rounded than Micah Parsons? Maybe, but would you rather have the well-rounded guy who's a B-plus pass rusher or Micah Parsons who's an A-plus pass rusher? You'd rather have Parsons because that particular skill is so important to that position. And so this stuff does get really hairy, really messy. There is a level of personal preference. There is a level of schematic fit. There is a level of, does that guy play for a coach that'll maximize what he does well? Right. But I think the last thing I'll say real quick is, don't confuse, and this is the thing that always falls on the most deaf of ears, Logan, is when we say player X is better than player Y, it doesn't mean that player Y sucks and we hate them.
Right.
It's just like a lot of times it's like, you asked, so we did the ranking, and we'd take this guy slightly ahead of this guy, but if we got stuck with the other guy, we'd be perfectly happy. But because we picked one over the other, it's human nature to be like, oh, so you hate the other guy. And it's like, no, but fine. I understand how this works. I've been doing the radio thing long enough to understand how this works.
It's interesting with the Brandon Ayuk thing. I think that's a really good example of kind of what we're talking about because, like you were mentioning that Debo or Brandon Ayuk. And I think when you go back and you watch, and I haven't watched this in this level of detail. I was actually listening to a podcast and it came up. And basically what they were saying was that, Ayuk is there to kind of be your route running winner. He's supposed to win versus man-to-man coverage. He's supposed to be able to kind of be the guy you can turn to in any situation because Debo's not that guy. Debo's got his own kind of special skill set, right? And, the speaker was basically saying that, Ayuk was not able to do that in the biggest game of the year in the Super Bowl. And if you remember, they kind of had some difficulty, with tight throwing windows versus man-to-man coverage. And he was arguing that that's why you go out and you draft a route-running purist like Ricky Pearsall, like a true receiver. Like we talked about him a lot from Florida. He was like maybe one of the best route runners in the class. He's got great hands, great feel, can run the choice. Any route you want, he can run. If you watch him at the Senior Bowl, he was uncoverable, right? And you watch his ability to make contested catches uncoverable. And so you are transitioning away from like these kind of, the running back in Debo Samuels, the yards after catch guy in Ayuk, and saying, we need dudes of this certain ilk. And that's the thing that breaks rankings, right? Is honestly, it's like, can this dude, player, whoever, win consistently as a receiver versus man-to-man coverage? And if I don't think he can do it, like if he has shown, like, he does all these other things well, like Ayuk, we talk about his vertical speed, his competitive toughness, his ability to block, like check, love all that stuff. But if he can't win versus man-to-man coverage, that's a separator. And that's a separator for coaches, and that's a definitive. That's what makes the top receivers in the NFL. You talk about your Tyreek Hills, your Justin Jeffersons, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown. Insert your top guy is that they can win consistently versus man-to-man coverage, and those are the types of things that separate guys out. And I think that's a really good comparison there because if he's requested a trade, if they can't get to the number that he wants, it's because they feel that he can't do something that this new guy can do. And I think when you look at the route running profile, again, I got to study this a little bit more. I think that might be the reason why. And again, that doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just doesn't mean he's a top 5 player. It could be a top 10 player, but he's definitely not a top 5 player in this example. And I'm not saying he doesn't get there. They don't financially work it out, but that's something that I think is a good example of things that separate good from great.
Yeah. Since we're down the rabbit hole, like I think, I don't know if you've watched Receiver on Netflix yet, Logan.
Not yet. No. Is it good? Is it worth it?
It's so good. And Debo and Kittle are featured, and we're 7 of the 8 episodes in right now. So we're like in the playoffs at this point, and it's really interesting remembering some of the games that Debo had last year, and hearing George Kittle talk about the impact Debo has, and Kyle talk about the impact Debo has on that offense, because the way Kyle has schemed it up is part of what makes it so difficult is there are certain guys that just wind up where they don't belong, right? Like Debo, what's he doing in the backfield? McCaffrey, what's he doing out wide? Yeah. Why is Kittle over there? Where's Kyle Juszczyk? What is he doing? He's supposed to be a fullback. Why is he lined up at X? Like there's those pieces that are designed, and some of them are distractions on given plays. Some of them are the actual advantage they're trying to create. And when Debo went out last year, you saw his value because that stuff, like Kyle had this amazing quote in there where he goes, "We don't just put in our backup Debo. Like, we don't have a backup Debo.
Right.
And so even though Debo's not this technical route runner or whatever, the fact that you can put him in almost any position on the field as a skill position and he can score is an invaluable, like, that is a separator amongst traits. So if you're lining up, like, who are the best technicians, who's got the best agility, who's got the best this, Debo might not particularly score on, well, the agility one he might, but he might not particularly score highest on the things you draw up is like, here's my ideal scouting profile of a receiver. But the ability to score from anywhere on every single play is a trait that just not many dudes in the league have. And that value to what they do in San Francisco is so extraordinarily high that they stared down the contract stuff a couple years ago when he wanted to trade, and they were like, "No, we're not trading you because you're too valuable to us." And you see the same thing with McCaffrey. Like, they paid McCaffrey like a weapon, not like a running back. And Kittle has some of that. Juszczyk has some of that. And I think that's like the interesting thing about Ayuk is that he doesn't. He's a receiver. And so if Kyle goes, well, we need to pay the weapons, I can find another receiver in the draft. Eventually you run out of money, and that kind of feels like what might be happening here with Ayuk is that he might wind up being the odd one out, not because he's not exceptionally good, but because he is more replaceable than the other dudes in that offense.
And I also think it speaks to a vision, a personnel vision. I think when you look at like Miami, there's no team in my opinion that has a stronger vision for their offense. Like, they want fast dudes. That's what they want, right? So if you're not fast, bye, right? If you look at Kyle, I think he does a good job, and John Lynch and the whole staff there of basically saying, like, we want dudes that don't fall into conventional buckets. Like, we got a fullback that can play tight end and play slot receiver. Like, we have a receiver that can play running back, which is very unusual. And he's such a dangerous weapon. He plays receiver like a running back. We've got a running back that can play like receiver. We've got, a tight end who's maybe one of the best mismatch weapons in the NFL. Like, and all of those guys are kind of bucketless and categoryless. And that in the same way speed presents a conflict for the defense, that lack of clear definition in the offense also presents issues. So, for example, like, think about this, you can be in an empty with 5 wide receivers in that offense. And they have that guy, Jennings from Tennessee, is that his name? Number 15 for them.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings.
Who's basically like a big wide receiver, but also plays like a tight end. You can be in that and get to 21 runs in terms of personnel, because Debo can play running back, Jennings can play tight end, and they have another little receiver there that can block a nickel like a fullback, right? And all of a sudden, like, think about the consternation that puts the defense in. And Kyle is able to do that with that personnel every single down. So I think you bring up a great point there. Maybe Ayuk is traditional enough that Kyle feels like he can, or Kyle, whoever is involved with this decision, feels like they can replace him because he doesn't, again, we're talking about categorizing and ranking players, doesn't fit in kind of this positionless area. Like, he is too traditional to kind of maximize their offensive identity. Maybe.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Of course, this is a Commanders adjacent story because of the relationship with Jaden Daniels, and it seems like this is Ayuk's preferred destination. It's also, I think, Commanders adjacent because this would be one of the first major non-draft moves, but veteran adjacent decisions that John Lynch will make without Adam Peters, who's now here and was such a huge part of that personnel department out in San Francisco. All right, that from Take Command, the full podcast with the rest of our mailbag available now wherever you get your pods. And we recorded another fun episode today that will be out tomorrow morning, so make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss a thing. And, of course, don't want you to miss a thing for the Hoffman Show either, so subscribe to the Hoffman Show podcast and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the free Odyssey app. Or if you use something else, we're there too. So go ahead and subscribe. When we get back, we continue our positional group previews. It's time to preview the Commanders' offensive line. You've got less than 10 minutes to prepare yourself. In fact, you've got about 5. So rub your temples, shake it out. We're going to talk about the Commanders' O-line. We're going to see how we feel on the other side of it. It is our Pick 6 previews, O-line style, next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just after 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock for the next 8 days at this point, we are taking one position group for the Washington Commanders.
We are the Commanders.
And we are previewing them piece by piece, question by question. Six of them, in fact. One at a time. Six questions. 6 o'clock. Sounds like it's time for a pick six at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, question number 1.
Number 1.
Who are the dudes? So we asked the same 6 questions, well, 5 of the same 6, and then Anthony has a wild card question for me for every position group. But it starts off, as many of you are just tuning back in, haven't been paying attention as much in the offseason, but you want to get ready for the season. This is the preview for you. So at left tackle, you have Brandon Coleman, Cornelius Lucas, Braden Daniels, Alex Akinbulu. Left guard, Nick Allegretti, Chris Paul, Ricky Stromberg, guard center, but has been practicing at guard in the spring. And then Julian Good-Jones, who was on the practice squad last year. That's where Akinbulu was for tackle. At center, Tyler Biotish, Michael Dieter, and then Stromberg would be your 3. Sam Cosme at right guard, backed up by last year's UDFA Mason Brooks. And then right tackle, according to ESPN's depth chart, you got Andrew Wiley and Trent Scott as the backup. So a lot of familiar names. They obviously bring in Allegretti and Biotish. They obviously bring in Coleman as a rookie. But a group that was much maligned that they kept some of the key pieces about, which makes the next group that we're going to talk about perhaps the most important when it comes to the success of this unit.
Number 2.
Who are the coaches? So this is where this group gets really interesting. The offensive line coach is Bobby Johnson. Johnson's resume is a mixed bag, to say the least. He started as a coach, as a graduate assistant with Akron back in the mid-'90s, did some defensive line coaching, did some tight ends coaching, and then got his first O-line job at Miami of Ohio in 2004. He started as the tight ends coach in 1999. And then has been an O-line coach, an assistant O-line coach at the High College, Indiana University for a while. The Bills, 2010, 2011. Coached tight ends with Jacksonville and Detroit. And then back to the O-line with Detroit in 2014. Back to tight ends in 2015 and 2017 with the Raiders. Assistant O-line with the Colts in 2018. And then his kind of big break was he was the O-line coach with the Bills under Brian Dable in 2019, had that job for 3 years, then spent the last 2 in New York, where the very, very mixed bag, mostly bad production-wise, but I'll get to why it's mixed in a moment, and then obviously he is here this year. The reason it's been mixed is, well, he's never been in like the same job forever. Like, it'd be great to get a Jeff Stoutland, right? He's the Eagles O-line coach. It's been in one place forever. There's no doubt he's one of the absolute best in the business. Stout's as good as they get. But for a guy like Johnson, he is both responsible in part for the development of Andrew Thomas, who's one of the best left tackles in football, and for Evan Neal, who's one of the worst right tackles in football. He has developed players. He has had some success. You think of back 2 years ago with New York, the offensive line was good, especially in the run. They generated a ton of explosive plays. Bobby Johnson absolutely played a part in helping design the quarterback run game that helped Daniel Jones be the best version of himself. So he's got a lot of experiences that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, that's good. The offensive line in New York was also one of the worst units in the league last year. The offensive lines in Buffalo were a little bit up and down. A guy like Neal, you're like, why did you like him in the first place? And if you liked him, why couldn't you develop him? Is it all on the player, or does the coach have something to do about that? And obviously the answer is yes, the coach has something to do about that, because either you missed on the evaluation or you missed on the coaching. One of the two. And, who knows how involved the specific coaches were in specific evaluations, but for a guy like Evan Neal, who's been a disaster in New York, I got questions. So Bobby Johnson, very, very, very interesting position coach, perhaps the most controversial hire that Dan Quinn made. Obviously, he's going to have some help. The biggest help will be Cliff Kingsbury as the play caller. What does he ultimately do from a play calling standpoint to help insulate the O-line? What kind of protection does he install? What kind of run games does he install? Is it more gap scheme like he ran in Arizona? Does he use some of the zone run stuff that Johnson and others have used in the past? And then the other interesting guy to me to watch is Brian Johnson, who is the pass game coordinator, but is a guy, and obviously Anthony Lynn is the run game coordinator, but Johnson's a guy that can also help insulate an offensive line with how he designs the pass game. And he was around Stoutland and around the best offensive line in football the last couple of years in Philadelphia. So very, very interesting group. Obviously, Anthony Lynn knows quite a bit about O-line play as a former OC and as the running backs coach and run game coordinator. Anybody else that we need to know? Darnell Stapleton, all due respect. Don't want to forget him. He's the assistant O-line coach. So those are the key players when it comes to the coaching staff and why Bobby Johnson is the key to a lot this year. All right, moving on. Our positional preview. Pick 6, offensive line.
Number 3.
Best player in the group. This is as easy as it gets on this roster. I guess there's a couple other positions where it's equally as easy, but Sam Cosmi's the best player on this roster at this position group. The right guard for the Commanders probably could have been a pretty good right tackle. He's really, really good. Potential Pro Bowl, potential All-Pro even at right guard, which is funny because he also might be the third best right guard in this division, depending how dude in Philly plays, Landon Dickerson. But obviously Zach Martin is, I guess Dickerson plays left, but in terms of third best guard in the division, Dickerson, amazing. Zach Martin going to the Hall of Fame. But Cosby's next. Like, Cosby's a young guy, needs better coaching. And despite the coaching level that he's got in the past couple of years, there are some O-line guru types that think he's a top 5 guard in the NFL right now. There's others that'll tell you he's not in the top 15, and the consensus pick is definitely that he's not in the top 10, because when ESPN did their list of polling executives around the league, I was pretty surprised that Cosby was not in the top 10, but he wasn't. So it tells you that reputationally he's not there yet. It tells you that he's got a long way to go to prove that he's that caliber of player, but enough people that I respect, including Logan, by the way, like him and think that his upside is like all pro, that I'm very curious to see where he's at this year, because he played phenomenally last year, and PFF had him, I believe, as one of their top 3 guards in terms of grade last year, despite all the struggles that Washington had along the offensive line.
Number 4.
Not best player, that's Cosmi. Biggest wild card player is easily the guy that we previewed today as our number 8 most important commander for the 2024 season, and that is Brandon Coleman, the gargantuan rookie tackle out of TCU. Now, as a reminder, Coleman played left guard quite a bit last year, but 2 years ago when TCU made their run to the national championship game, he played left tackle. He graded out, according to PFF's college grades, better at left tackle than he did at guard. And he played guard last year, not because of his own play, but because they had a better backup at tackle when they lost some guys than they did at guard. So they kicked him inside, let the backup left tackle play, and that was the way that they could get their best 5 on the field. So it tells you about his versatility. It tells you about some of the power that he plays with, some of the things that we associate with guards that hopefully he can bring to the tackle position. His spring was interesting. He showed some flashes. You see, first of all, the size. Like, when he steps on the field, you're like, dude looks like a big mamma jamma. Okay, check. Size for a tackle, he's got it. Measurables, arm length, quickness, some of the shuttle drills, all that kind of stuff. He's got the foot speed in him athletically to play at the tackle position. But what makes tackle so hard in the NFL, especially in pass blocking situations, is you have to play against some of the freakiest athletes on the planet. Dudes like Myles Garrett, who are 6'5", 280 to 300 pounds, run a 4.5 40, have crazy long arms, and are some of the most powerful, most explosive athletes with that weight and size added to it, and you got to stay in front of them. Good freaking luck. It's hard. And you have to play tackle because of that, an outstanding feel for space. And that's the area in the spring that I'll lean on Logan here is he and I were watching some of the drills on some of the days out there in minicamp where he's like, his pass set, he's off the line. So if you think of a line dead across your body, you want to make sure your line is pretty centered on the opponent's line, because then he doesn't have an advantage inside or outside. And he'd overset the line sometimes, he'd underset a little bit, but it's going to take time to adjust. The question is, how quickly can he do it? If Brandon Coleman adjusts to playing O-line at a high NFL level quickly, they have solved a massive problem for now and for later, and it, on some level, changes the franchise fundamentally and where they are in the rebuild, especially if Jaden Daniels cooperates the quarterback position. And by the way, protecting him with a good left tackle is going to help Jaden Daniels cooperate quite well from the quarterback position. With that said, if you miss on Brandon Coleman or he's not ready and it's a question mark going into next year, and you wind up with, let's say, the 15th pick, do you wind up taking an offensive tackle, a left tackle specifically, in the first round next year? It's certainly going to be on the list. Also, you then have to play someone who's more backup caliber. And what does that do to what you can do with your offense? Whether you have to limit it a little bit more in terms of space. The right side of your line is really mobile in Wiley and in Cosme, and then the left side with Cornelius Lucas out there is pretty stiff, if you will. You can't move as much. You can't do as much to the outside because he doesn't have the mobility, even if he's a very good pass blocker. Or you go Trent Scott, who's smaller, more mobile, but maybe not as good, and in some of your drop back game either suffers or becomes unavailable because you know you can't protect it. So these are the questions, and that's why Coleman is the biggest wild card, because if he's good and he can play and he can do everything, now your whole offense is on the table. It's not limited, and it's just a matter of playing with consistency as a rookie, which is not going to happen at an extreme level, but hopefully can be good enough that you give yourself a chance week in and week out.
Number 5.
All right, Ant, time to bring you into the proceedings, sir. This is the part where you ask me a question about the offensive line that I don't know is coming. What is your wild card question before we get to our roster prediction?
Okay, Craig, so this question is sort of kind of based on your optimism for this offensive line unit. Last year, we finished second in the NFL in sacks given up. In the last 6 years, I actually did some research on this.
Oh! Okay, Ant, with the research.
We finished in the top 10 of sacks given up over the last 6 years. So when it comes to this group, how optimistic are you that we won't be in that top 10 sacks given up? Given that, we have a new offensive coordinator, he may be able to mask some of the deficiencies that our line has. Also, we have a mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And last time I checked, Cliff Kingsbury with Kyler Murray, they did not end up top 10, I guess, in sacks given up because of Kyler Murray's unique ability.
Well, and also I would imagine some of Cliff's play calling.
That too.
When you take those surveys and it's like 1 through 5, 0 is very disappointed. 2 is somewhat disappointed. I would say I'm at a 4, somewhat optimistic, right? The reason is they had a volume issue more than they did an execution issue last year. I was saying this in almost the exact same language earlier today. I'll give a shout out to my guy Louis T on YouTube. Does an awesome show, and he was nice enough he's doing this whole summer series, and I was the last one on his summer series, so really appreciate Louis T's time. But we were talking about almost this exact same thing. It's funny that you asked this. He didn't have the research though, and I'm just saying, look at you bringing the facts and figures. He had a bunch of other information that was great. But no, the thing that I was trying to explain to him and to everybody is last year's a volume issue, right? They dropped back to pass in pure drop back more than anyone else in the NFL. They had the second most passing attempts in the entire league last year, with Mahomes and the Chiefs being the only ones who threw more. That was recklessly irresponsible considering Sam Howell was your quarterback and had a sack to pressure, like had a sack issue when he got pressured, had a mediocre O-line skill-wise. But if you look at like the pass rush win-loss rates for the O-linemen, guys like Wiley graded out way higher than people would imagine. But if you shoot, if your pass rate is middle of the pack, but you get rushed more, the percentage that you lose might be in the middle, but the number of times you lose goes up. I hope that makes sense. And that's kind of what happened. And that percentage, by the way, could be better if it's insulated by play calling where it's less predictable. So long story short, this is why Cliff is so important is, yes, there's design things, but purely from play calling. If you use more play action, which tends to not lead to sacks, if you use more quick game and time it and coach it up effectively, but also if you just pass the ball less, if you just let Jaden hand the ball off to Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler or throw it to Eckler on screens and hand, Jahan Dotson and Terry the ball on reverses. Like, there are so many things you can do to get the ball to playmakers quickly and efficiently that have zero risk of sack to your quarterback, the most basic of which is handing the football off. And in his final year in Arizona, Cliff actually ran the ball at a pretty decent clip. And I do think that Dan, and to an extent Adam, will dictate that we are trying to insulate and protect our quarterback. Don't forget where Adam comes from. Adam comes from San Francisco, where Kyle does that better than anyone. And obviously, who was Dan's last OC that he was really successful with? Kyle. He understands the value as a defensive coordinator of running the football and as a defensive-minded head coach, but also of what you can do to unlock a quarterback if you give him the proper run game support. And so ultimately, my optimism for this offensive line doesn't come from the fact that I'm secretly trying to tell anybody that they're actually really talented and good. It's that the play calling can't possibly be as recklessly irresponsible as it was last year, and that in itself is going to be enough to limit the opportunities to be sacked. Nevertheless, the sacks themselves.
Hey, I think I'm right there with you, to be honest. I think I'm right there with you.
All right, which leads us to the dudes who are going to make the team. It is time, Anthony, for our roster prediction.
Number 6.
Who makes the team? I think that, well, first of all, 8, 9, or 10. I tend to think 9, but we'll see what happens after I name 9 dudes and if I want to add another one. 8 is typically how many you have active on game day. Typically, there's at least 1, if not 2 inactives. Do you have a strong 9 or 10?
I like 9.
You like 9.
I like 9.
Okay. So, Coleman for sure is making it. Lucas is making it. Allegretti is making it. Biotish is making it. Cosme is making it. Wiley is making it. Scott is making it. So that's 4 tackles and your 3 starters on the inside. I think Michael Dieter, they didn't bring him in to not have him on the roster. Could he get knocked out by Stromberg? Maybe. But I think that Dieter is on the roster, which then is already 8. And Dieter is your swing guy inside. So you have backup center, backup guard, which means we then have 1 spot if we're going 9 for Chris Paul, Mason Brooks, Braden Daniels, Ricky Stromberg, Alex Akimbulu, and Julian Good-Jones.
I definitely think Chris Paul is in there.
I think Paul is the easiest one to be like, this dude is close to a starting caliber guard. You've obviously started some last year. I think there's a lot to work with. But that means your 3rd and 4th round pick from last year, Stromberg and Daniels, are both on the way out. Daniels, it feels like that's been the way since he got drafted. I don't know a lot of people that were like, yeah, I'm a super Daniels guy. I think Brooks is the sleeper because he's got a nasty streak and a competitiveness to him that screams Dan Quinn football player.
Yep.
But is he good enough? He's a UDFA.
Yeah. He was a little raw, but everybody loved how aggressive he was last year in camp, especially Doc Walker.
Yeah, he's a Doc Walker. Doc Walker loves that guy. So I think Chris Paul is number 9.
Okay. Stromberg is interesting though. Depending on like what he shows in camp, maybe we lean to 10, but I would still think
that's
9.
the thing. I think it comes down to how Daniels, Stromberg, and Brooks play in camp. And Daniels and Stromberg in particular are interesting. One, because like as much as they like Michael Dieter, if Stromberg is good, you keep Stromberg because of the contract. He's younger, right? And you have multiple years of control. Daniels, they drafted as a tackle, and they were having him out there as a tackle, and he had a rough spring. But if he can show he can play tackle good enough, and he maybe can play guard, like is that inside-outside swing piece enough to keep him on the roster for depth? That would be the question. I think Julian Good-Jones is like a decently fine backup caliber player. He got a little bit of run even at the end of last year. So like there's some interesting guys down the depth chart. But I think ultimately it comes down to 9 with Coleman, Allegretti, Biotish, Cosme, Wiley, Lucas, Paul, Dieter, and Scott. That's my prediction.
I like it.
It's also July 17th.
It's too early?
So we'll see.
Uh-oh.
All right, that's our positional group preview for the offensive line, pick 6 style. Anthony, who do we want to do tomorrow?
I think we go DB. No. I think we go defense, and I think we go. I mean, we did D-line. Should we just go to the linebackers?
It does feel like we should just go linebacker tomorrow.
Should we go?
So go linebacker tomorrow, and then maybe running back on Friday?
Yeah, I think that works.
All right, that's the plan. By the way, rookies report tomorrow as well.
Yes, they do.
So get ready for your first day of school pictures.
Yes, sir.
Yay! All right, we get back on the Hoffman Show. Anthony, what are we doing?
After this,
Yes, our unplanned segment.
we did have an unplanned segment. I have an idea. I'll discuss
Anthony
with
has
you.
an idea next. Anthony, are you doing the Macarena?
Maybe.
Noted.
I have not done it this summer. I have not
Is
done
it
it
something?
this
Now, wow, if I hold the light like this, it looks like I'm telling ghost stories.
summer.
It's dark and stormy outside. You know why I'm doing this?
No.
Because it's actually dark and stormy outside.
Very much so.
Actually, I just wanted to lower the light because it all of a sudden got rude. Because the light makes us look pretty. It just fell down. It also is like a contrast thing, and because it's so dark and nasty outside, the light just was coming off. It's very bright. I'm gonna do this live here. I'm gonna do something that people driving around already know, which is that it is disgusting outside. Like it is.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
It is coming down. Can people? I don't know. See what? I can't open it.
They probably can't see the rain.
It's literally like raining sideways outside.
Can they
it
see
is.
the street?
Shoot. Also, I can't really turn around very well because then my headphones go out. There are some cars with like some big wheels out behind, like parked on the street right here, and their wheels are underwater. This tree is definitely a little more crooked than normally is.
Yeah.
Behind us.
Definitely concerning.
Because it was so daggum hot earlier. I just went Steve Spurrier daggum on you. I was so daggum hot. 5-11, not very good. That I almost parked in the parking garage underneath the building, but we have to pay for that. And we have a secret spot that Anthony and I park at that's free.
Yep.
And so, but I was like, dang, it's so hot. It might be worth $18 to not walk outside. And now I wish that I would have, because now if it doesn't stop raining like this, Anthony, we're going to have to walk to our cars out in that mess.
I will not be walking. I will be sprinting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. There is that.
Even though you sort of kind of get more wet.
I was going to say, there is a theory. I almost was going to say this, and now you've got here. There is a theory that you get more wet when you run, even though you spend less time, but like the water hits you with so much more force.
Yeah.
That you actually get more wet than if you walk.
I still don't understand it, but, I'd rather not be in the rain that much longer.
I feel like there's got to be a threshold there. Like if I could walk in 25 seconds or sprint in 7, I feel like the 7 is probably worth it.
Yeah.
But if it's like I could run for a minute or walk in 2, I'm probably just going to be drenched either way. Yeah. So there's that. But I think this just goes to prove, though, that Anthony, summer is overrated, bro.
Yes. Very much so.
Like, I think we're sold. It's not lies as a kid, but like things change as you evolve in life. Very philosophical. Things change as your life evolves. Things are getting weird here at the end of the show. But things change as your life evolves, right? Because the reason summer's awesome when you're a kid is because you don't have to go to school. And you get to go play with your friends, and you're outside, and like you're 7 years old. So what do you care about the heat? Like you're just outside playing ball, with your friends. Make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure your kids stay hydrated. Can't be having kids passing out in the heat. But like, it's cool. You get to go to the pool, like whatever it is that your summer activity was or is. You get to do it, and like, maybe your parents don't work as much, or they work from home, or whatever. Even going back to the summers, like I know when my parents owned their company, they did summer Fridays, like half days on Fridays was a thing for them. And I think in part because they had a lot of it wasn't like they ran a major company, like, somewhere between 5 and 25 employees at varying stages of the company before they sold it a couple years ago. But like some of them were parents, and like you got to figure out childcare. It's one of the things that like as you get older and your friends start having kids, you're like, wow, man, life was way more complicated than I realized when I was a child. How did they take care of, like, you realize that part of public school is it's something to do for the children during the day while the parents go to work and make the money. But like summer thunderstorms, trash. They're dangerous. They're nasty. Like, thank God it stopped. But it was horrendous out here 10 minutes ago. I will say, by the way, Linnell, for some reason, he's still here. Maybe he's got overtime tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But he's been here. He was bopping around, and he came in here to get a charger. And then I was like, have you looked outside? He looks. There was a lightning, and he sprinted away from the window. And then he said, "I'm a giant weenie." He didn't say that verbatim. I'm substituting a word here.
Yeah.
I'm a giant weenie when it comes to thunder and lightning. I'm like, I get it. It's not. Nobody likes it.
Nope.
When it's that intense. I mean, some people do. Weirdos. Just kidding. Have your thunder and lightning fetish. It's fine. Did the lights just flicker?
Yes, they did.
Right on the cue. Should I get the light back and do more ghost stories?
Oh my God. It can't be that bad outside, man.
But it's also like 1,000 degrees outside. And spring and fall in DC is incredible. Like when it gets into the 70s, low 70s,
Yes.
especially, maybe a little bit of a wind. The edge is off the heat, but it's still warm. Like this region for those 4 days a year is put that on a postcard, baby. Why would you want to live anywhere else? And then it gets to summer, and you're like, why the hell do I live here? I love D.C. I have made it my home. I am happy to live here the rest of my life, except for the summers. Can I go live in Canada? Or maybe even if I'm going to go south, can I get closer to the equator? Because I think like when you get closer to the equator, at some point it drops off. Like we were looking last night in the press box at Audi, because the U.S. was playing Costa Rica. And it was like, whoa, what's the temperature like in Costa Rica? It was like 70 in Costa Rica right now. Why don't we live in Costa Rica? Doesn't get that hot. Doesn't get that cold. Yet here we are in overrated season of summer, roasting, only cooled off by gigantic thunderstorms that might drop a tree on your house. Don't like it. Not a fan. Boo, summer.
I think also when we factor in the fact that we wait until summer to do trips to warm places, like we can do these same trips to warm places in the winter,
Yeah.
the fall. I don't know why we wait till the summer.
Well, winter, I'm the king of the winter trip to a warm place. When I was on the beat, bro,
Love it.
the second I knew the Commanders were eliminated from the playoffs,
Oh, yeah.
I had a plane ticket booked to Miami like 2 years in a row.
Smart man.
One of my best friends is down there. I would go stay with her, or my cousin was down there. I stayed with him 1 year. So like I was down in Miami. I had a place to stay. Is it cool if I stay for 4 days? Yep. I'll give you a key. Do whatever you want. Sick. Oh, it wasn't like I was like, I don't need you to entertain me. Like we'll hang out, but like I need a roof, and it to not cost very much.
Yeah. Across in the corner.
One of our friends is getting married in Phoenix in February.
Phoenix is hot.
The second, not in February, it's not.
Oh, that's
The second I heard the wedding was in Phoenix, I was like, Rachel, we're going, right? She's like, I know. She doesn't love like a ton of travel. She's like, I know. It's Phoenix in February. There's 100% chance I knew you said we were going to go. Plus, I genuinely want to go to this wedding. This wedding could be a banger, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, get me to Phoenix. Get me to LA. Get me to Miami. Get me to anywhere warm.
San Fran,
mild. I don't even need it to be warm. I just need it to be not freezing, but also the same in the summer. Can I go? People are like, I have to go to the beach in the summer. Oh, and sit on the sand that's 110 degrees?
1 billion degrees, man.
We'll get in the water. That's where the sharks are. Summer, overrated. Winter also sucks. Spring and fall, I got to fit. Where in the world can I live where it's spring and fall all the time? San Francisco.
Yes.
No wonder it costs so much freaking money to live in San Francisco.
Would you prefer the winter or the summer, though?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Not because we planned it, because I genuinely knew that that's where this conversation was eventually going.
I'm also biased, so.
I really do hate the cold. Like with a visceral, I think I prefer, as much as I'm whining about summer, I think I'd still prefer summer to winter.
Yeah, me too.
Because there are elements of the summer that I actually am a bit of a sicko when it comes to running in the heat. I actually like it. And also they say like summer training creates fall PRs. because all of a sudden you run in the heat and you have to run 1-2 minutes slower per mile, and your body like makes these crazy adaptations. And then all of a sudden you get to the fall and you hit that perfect like high 50s degree day, and you go for a run, and if you're lucky, that's race day.
Feeling good.
And you go out there and you just absolutely, you're like, my heart rate's 135 and I'm running a PR because your body's like, we don't have to sweat. This is not hard at all. Yeah. We don't have to cool anything. It's cool already. So like I enjoy, like this morning we ran and it was terrible because it was hot and it was muggy, but like there's a sick part of me that enjoyed it, and also I know that it's really good for me. So there's enough summer stuff that I like, and also there's just a general relaxation in the summer. In the winter, everyone's just miserable. It just sucks.
And you sit on their face.
You don't have, and you like can't go out. Like in the summer, you can go outside. You have to take precautions. In the winter, you're like, what are we going to do outside? We're just stuck inside all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be hot if you want to go to a baseball game in the summer, but you can. It's going to be hot if you want to go for a bike ride in the summer, but you can. All your outdoor stuff, possible.
Negative.
Like at least here, like in Las Vegas. Like who goes to Vegas to go outside? Unless you're going in like the fall or perhaps the winter. See? Now we're talking.
We are talking.
Anyway, the point of the segment is summer overrated. We got lied to as kids because we didn't have to go to school. That's the short version. Too long, didn't read it. They lied to us. We didn't have to go to school. All right, when we get back, best thing from the show today, and real things real people said in real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show, wrapping up here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Tomorrow on the show, never read the comments. Plus, number 7 on our countdown of the 10 most important commanders, and our linebacker positional group preview at 6 o'clock. So, number 7, most important commander at 4:30. Never read the comments, 5, 6 o'clock, positional preview. And then we'll see what else happens in the wide world of sports tomorrow on the show. ESPN also might be releasing the last of their top 100 countdown, so that's either tomorrow or Friday. I can't remember if they're releasing the final 25 tomorrow or that it's like 15 and they're saving the top 10. We did our top 5 predictions earlier in the week, so we'll see if we were right. But, yeah, that's tomorrow on the show. Anthony, any other housekeeping things before we get to the best thing from the show today?
I think you touched on everything.
I tried my best. I'm a professional, Anthony. Which brings us to the best of the show today, when Josh Robbins really appreciated the fact that I try to be a professional. Yeah, good luck with everything else. And we look forward to the story tomorrow morning on the court. I'm really pumped about that. Like, genuinely pumped about to read that story.
Awesome. Bless you for saying that, Craig. And you asked some darn good questions. Better questions than the ones I asked.
I'm doing my best, Josh. Thank you, sir. Have a good one. That is Josh Robbins, everybody. Anthony, clearly we need to cut that for an open. Whenever someone compliments me, we need to remind people at least once an hour about it. We appreciate Josh Robbins greatly. You got it marked?
Yes, I have it marked. Should I also play it as a part of the best of the show?
That it might have to be.
It's a candidate.
It's a candidate for no other reasons than my ego. When we get back, man, am I playing into the character that some of y'all have of me? Sounds about what I remember it as.
Do you remember that word for word?
Yeah, basically. Okay. I was like, nope, that's what I'm going to say. Yep, that's exactly what I said, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yep. Josh was great. We talked a lot about Alex Sarr's many misses. We talked about things he did well. We also talked about Bub Carrington, kind of where we're at with the roster. Is there another trade coming? Really great stuff with Josh Robbins. 5 o'clock today, so hour 2 in the podcast feed. Again, we talked about Brandon Coleman at 4:30. He was number 8 in our countdown. And then our O-line position group preview at 6. So if you missed any of it, the Hoffman Show podcast, subscribe, boys and girls. How many times do we have to tell you?
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All righty then. So there's a new show on ESPN Plus called In the Arena with Serena Williams, and it's similar to the Tom Brady doc they did a few years ago. I'm kind of saving it, honestly, Anthony. I might download it all and watch it on the flight back from Paris in a couple of weeks. Trying to figure out. Oh, by the way, today the 17th. It is. The Simone Biles Netflix doc drops tonight. Pretty pumped about that. Also got to catch up on Hard Knocks. Got a lot of good stuff to watch on TV. Anyway, the Serena doc is out now, and she told what can only be described as an amazing story in the second episode that just released.
A few days after the U.S. Open final, I'm in D.C. with my sister. I see this guy that I'm dating, so-and-so, and I stayed at his house for a couple of weeks. It was the first relationship I had ever had, but I was in my 20s, so, whatever, that was that. And then I go home, and he ghosts me. I got ghosted. And it wasn't even that serious, but it was like I used that and I made it way more serious than what it was. So when he ghosted me, I used that as an opportunity to say he's gonna regret this for the rest of his life. That was just the motivation I needed, just the excuse I used to go the extra mile. I'm gonna make sure that this person never forgets me. I'm gonna make sure that this person sees me everywhere for the rest of their lives.
First of all, ESPN and the producers of this documentary, the sound effects are so intense and so much. They did this in the Brady doc too, where all of a sudden there'd be like waves crash. You're like, why are there waves crashing right now? Why are there wolves running through a forest? The story is amazing though on its own. Which begs a question. Anthony, if you are that guy today and you see this, which is possible, there's a chance that this person, because it was in D.C., is listening to this show right now. Would you tell all your friends, I'm the reason Serena Williams is great? Or would you never admit to being that guy?
I would admit to being that guy. I think there's also another guy from Beyonce's past who everybody like knows about. So if I'm that guy, if I'm one of those guys that messed up, possibly being with some of the greatest performers and athletes, I'm going to admit it. I'm going to admit it.
Yeah, I will say this. If you are that guy and you were like, yeah, I'm taking credit for Serena's greatness, you suck. Anthony answered it in a smarter way, which is, I would admit to being the person she's talking about, not that you would take credit for it. If you take, in some ways, I set it up as a trick question because you're not the reason she did anything. You just happen to be the dumb guy who ghosted Serena Williams.
Yeah.
But I feel like I would tell him, I'd be like, yeah, that was me.
Bad time.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm an absolute buffoon. Crazy that it happened in D.C. too. I don't know. D.C. dating worked out quite all right for me.
Yeah.
I've got a lovely wife who I met here. Love was in the DMs on Instagram.
Oh, you shot?
Yeah.
Ooh,
you don't know the story of how we met?
I do not.
We don't have enough show left for me to do it. But we were talking on Instagram, we met on Instagram because we ran in some similar circles. So it wasn't like a total stranger situation. But I've heard that dating in DC is terrible. And if it's terrible in DC for Serena Williams, yeah, it's got to be terrible.
Hate to see it, man.
Hate to see it. All right, that's our show. We have a hilarious Lewis Hamilton thing tomorrow in Real Things. Very funny. But you have to tune in tomorrow for that because our show's done for today.